Salam alaikum. Asab el-Saada.
Excellencies, Excellencies, dear guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Doha World Negotiation Day 2025. My name is Sabrina and I'll be the Master of Ceremony of this day. This is the Doha World Negotiations Day and it is organized by UNITA, United Nations Institute for Training and Research in collaboration with Qatar Debate.
Welcome to the second Doha World Negotiation Day. My name is Dr. Sabrina Wollmann, and I will act as your Master of Ceremonies during today's event. Doha World Negotiation Day is organized by the United Nations Institute for Training and Research in partnership with the Doha Forum and Qatar Debate. On behalf of the Division for Multilateral Diplomacy of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, please allow me to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you who is joining us here in person today, as well as the over 1,000 people who are joining us online. Your presence here underscores the significance of our shared commitment to diplomacy, collaboration, and global cooperation, as well as the importance of the art of negotiation in peaceful conflict resolution. Since 1963, our institute has been providing high-quality, tailored capacity-building programs and innovative learning activities that have empowered the leaders over the past 60 years with the aim of advancing the Sustainable Development Goals and reaching the furthest first. In this regard, the aim of this year's Doha World Negotiation Day is to celebrate individuals and organizations that have made a difference through negotiation, by bringing together some of the greatest negotiators and experts in the world, to share and to discuss the role negotiation occupies in today's challenging world. This morning, we already had a 1-hour masterclass in cooperation with Qatar Debate that explores the key skills for negotiators today. Before we start with this afternoon's event, please allow me to quickly go through today's agenda as well as some housekeeping points. Our agenda today includes a fireside chat, a panel discussion uniting distinguished speakers, each bringing valuable insights to the forefront of our discussion. During the opening ceremony, we will have the pleasure to listen to the insights of Mr. Rabia El-Haddad, Director of the Division for Multilateral Diplomacy at UNITA, and Her Excellency Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garces, former President of the UN General Assembly, former Minister of Foreign Affairs and former Minister of National Defense of Ecuador. Subsequently, we will move to our fireside chat that will be moderated by Her Excellency Ms. Elaine White Gomez, former Vice Minister and Ambassador of Costa Rica to the United Nations and Professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies in Washington, D.C., who will be speaking with Mr. Pierre Krähenbühl, Director General of the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, to reflect on the ICRC's work and what being on the front line really means. In the following, we will move to our panel discussion on Negotiating Peace in a Fragmented World, the Case for Preventative Diplomacy Today, which will again be moderated by Her Excellency Ms. Elaine White, who will be joined by our esteemed panelists, Her Excellency Ms. Tarja Halonen, former President of Finland and member of the UN Secretary-General's High-Level Advisory Board on Mediation, Ms. Irene Fellin, NATO Secretary-General's Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security and Human Security, Mr. Karim Hagag, Director of the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, and Ms. Alanut Qasim Al-Tamimi, Senior Advisor at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar. This panel will provide a space for leaders, diplomats, and practitioners to reflect on the lessons of today's conflicts, examine the obstacles to negotiation in a fragmented world, and explore how preventative diplomacy can be revitalized as a credible tool of collective security. The discussion will highlight the role of the United Nations, regional organizations, civil society, and reassert the need for political will to place peace and prevention back at the heart of international cooperation. At the end of the panel, we will then proceed to the award ceremony, during which we will bestow the Doha Best Negotiator of the Year award, a prestigious distinction given to an exceptional negotiator who has displayed exemplary skills and achievement on the international stage in the preceding year. Selected by a renowned international jury composed of eminent negotiators and leaders, the award honors an individual who has demonstrated outstanding leadership, creativity, and resilience in navigating complex negotiations and finding peaceful solutions to challenging global issues. During the award ceremony and closing speeches, we will have the pleasure to listen to the remarks of His Excellency, Mr. Mubarak Al-Kawari, Executive Director of the Doha Forum, who will deliver the closing remarks, followed by some words of the recipient of the Doha Best Negotiator of the Year award. Now, before we commence, please allow me to mention a few housekeeping points. Kindly note that this event is streamed live to over 1,000 participants online. Following our initial panel discussion, the moderator will open the floor for a Q&A session, and we will be taking questions from the audience. During the Q&A session, please state your name and the organization you represent before formulating your question, so the panelists can address you directly. And now, without much further ado, I am delighted to give the floor to Mr. Rabia Al-Haddad, Director of the Division for Multilateral Diplomacy at UNITA, for his opening remarks. Rabia, the floor is yours.
This time I printed my speech. Okay, so Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first allow me to thank our colleagues from the Doha Forum. There is nothing better in life than to end the year I was speaking to some of you than here in Doha. We have an excellent partnership. It has become a space for sharing, for networking, but also, to prepare ourselves for next year. It's a place where the ideas that we are discussing right now will be brewing in our brains and will enable us to start next year on solid grounds. Thank you also for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Qatar, with whom we have excellent relationship, and specifically to the Ambassador of Qatar in Geneva, Ambassador Hind Al-Muftah. She considers this activity, this event as her baby. This is the words she uses when I'm speaking with her. She is the first person who believed in it and empowered us to move forward. What is the purpose of the World Negotiation Day, what we are doing here today? Two purposes. Number one is to disseminate a culture of negotiation in a world that has become increasingly competitive. And I think we all agree on the need for that. Number two, and I was discussing this also with some persons, is to empower delegates and negotiators who are positively moving forward in overcoming negotiation deadlocks. Because whenever there is a deadlock in a negotiation, of course, the negotiators are blamed, and people do not give the due recognition for their effort. So it's our task in the United Nations to recognize things when things positive happen in the world. So, and I'm also extremely happy to be with such a distinguished members of the panel. I was asked to give these opening remarks, and my opening remarks started when I was in the office sitting with Patricia, and my colleague, and someone from the team mentioned the word hell. When that person mentioned the word hell, the image of Dag Hammarskjöld, the second Secretary General of the United Nations, flashed through my mind. As you know, Dag Hammarskjöld was the only Secretary General to have died in an accident, in a plane accident, when he was brokering peace in the Congo. And he was the architect of preventive diplomacy. Now, the interesting part, he said a very famous sentence in one of his speeches when he was in the University of California in 1954. He mentioned in his speech, the last sentence actually of that speech became very famous. What did he say? He said, "It has been said that the United Nations was not created in order to bring us to heaven, but in order to save us from hell. Now, this quote might sound a little bit tainted with the monotheistic viewpoint of life, but I believe that it is one fundamental quote that we need to unpack together. So this is the best illustration of preventive diplomacy. And the idea now together in this speech, I would like us to all, and also later on in the panel, to reflect upon the definition of hell. What did he mean by hell? So how does hell manifest itself? Who are the actors of hell? Who are the victims of hell? Can we prevent hell from materializing in our world? This is another also question for the panelists that are here. And how do we manage hell? Maybe this is also an element that we need to discuss. So in these opening remarks, I would like us to unpack this sentence. Bear with me, it has a deep meaning. So he started the sentence by saying, it has been said. What did he mean? I believe that what he meant, if you go back and look at all the deliberations and the discussions leading to the creation of the Charter of the United Nations, everything was done to create a charter that prevented a third world war. So in the deliberations between diplomats and delegates, the "it has been said" was verbal. However, the most important, more important than what it has been said, I think, was it has been written. So I believe that we can complement his speech, his sentence, by saying, actually, it has been written. Where was it written? In the Charter of the United Nations, which is the foundation of the biggest international organization. If you look in the purpose, Article 1 of the Charter of the United Nations, the organization was established to do what? To maintain international peace and security, to prevent breaches to peace and acts of aggression. Article 1, how does it take place? Through effective collective measures. This is the essence of preventive diplomacy that we are going to be discussing today. Article 33, which is the heart also of the United Nations, settling disputes through negotiation, mediation, arbitration, adjudication, the judicial settlement, and having the Security Council in charge of this. This is the essence of preventive diplomacy and the tools laid in front of us of preventive diplomacy. And then the role of the Secretary General of the United Nations is highlighted in Article 99, when the Secretary General has the capacity to bring matters of international peace and security to the Security Council to deal with these matters. So, it's not only it has been said, it has been written, and it's legally binding, and it's also explicit and implied in the powers, the legal powers of the United Nations. Now, we finished the first part of the sentence. So he said in the second part, the United Nations was not created in order to bring us to heaven, but to save us from hell. Good. But I tend to disagree here. I think in the 60s, I do understand that the United Nations was not established to bring us to heaven. Nowadays, if you look at all of what the United Nations is offering, the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, we were dreaming about this back in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. The word sustainability didn't exist at that time. Now, if you look at the Charter of the United Nations, the Charter of the United Nations doesn't contain the word environment. Search for it, you will never find it. And it doesn't contain, by the way, the word preventive diplomacy. You will never find these words in the Charter. However, the United Nations is extremely efficient in these two areas, fighting climate change and environment. What does it tell us? These are questions for the panelists together, that we have together here today. So the work of the United Nations in the SDGs, in the international peace and security, the international human rights architecture, soon we're going to celebrate the Universal Declaration for Human Rights. All of these are what I would call a set of values that are packed in a condensed manner in a positive peace initiative that the United Nations has constitutionalized in the Charter of the United Nations. So, yes, these elements are not only saving us from hell, they are moving us to heaven, because this vision, these values are like a lighthouse for us. We know more or less in which direction we have to go. I wanted to highlight this point. Now we get to the part that we are all trying to avoid, is the last part of his sentence, to save us from hell. So I was reflecting, what did Dag Hammarskjöld mean by that? Which hell is he talking about? Is it the spiritual hell? Are we talking about the hell that we create for ourselves here on earth? So who are the creators of that hell? Who are the victims? Who are the actors? Who are those who manage this hell? And is this hell inevitable? Is it an offspring of our nature? These are philosophical questions. So you have a crossroad, and usually people say at a crossroad you will find the devil. Because when you are at the crossroad, these are the times when you have to ask yourself questions that are not convenient, and you are trying to escape from answering these questions. However, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that what Dag Hammarskjöld meant is that the United Nations should help us break the cycle that is leading to hell. And this cycle is self-fulfilling in nature, like Oedipus. That's the same cycle that we are talking about since thousands of years. Because if you look at the history of humanity, you have thousands of years of suffering. And I think this is what he had in the back of his mind. So he is inviting us to prevent this repetitive self-fulfilling prophecy of violence. And also, I think he is inviting us to reflect upon hell as a space that we are constructing for ourselves on earth. Now, myself, and I was speaking to some of the colleagues here, I spent the 16 first years of my life in what was labeled as the civil war in Lebanon. I assure you that hell, from the Dag Hammarskjöld perspective, is a place where everyone is a victim. So in a state of war, and I believe that our colleague from ICRC knows what I am talking about, since him and all of the organization that he represents are trying to manage the symptoms of hell, the bad fruits that are growing in the garden of hell. And it's an illusion for us to think that in hell, some people are governing hell, are in charge of hell, and some people are serving in hell, which are the lesser persons in hell. In hell, everyone is a victim, because what is hijacked in hell is your free will. You cannot plan tomorrow in hell. And what is hijacked in hell is your future. You cannot imagine that any type of future in hell. And these two elements are extremely important. The last element is that there is also an illusion, a myth, that says that decision makers are free in hell. Because some of the decision makers lead us towards hell in the bad decisions they take when they move towards that crossroad where they have to take decisions. And we think that, they are immune from going to hell. No. You can check in every civil war, every war, that even the decision makers who lead towards hell end up themselves not controlling the beast that they have created. So, this is a sentence for you. Hell is a place where bad things happen to you and not for you, and where your future is killed and where your free will is hijacked. And the worst part in hell, trust me on this, is that no one knows when hell stops and when it finishes and when it ends. I spent my time watching television in my childhood, watching Peace and Voice, passing by to Lebanon and meeting people and establishing a ceasefire, only for that ceasefire after 24 hours collapsing. So it's an illusion to think that this is something that you can control. No one controls hell. And the interesting also element is that when you think that hell is over, there is always a smart person in hell that ends up digging deeper. You think you reached the bottom, but they take you to a lower level of hell, similar to what Dante Alighieri mentioned. So hell has many layers. Now we come back to preventive diplomacy. The essence of the word diplomacy is preventive in nature, we know it. So my question now to the panelists and for all of us, because you are going to engage with them today, is how can we prevent hell from materializing on our planet? This is number one question. How can we make it less inevitable? And who is in charge of it? Is it only the decision makers that lead us to hell? Or each one of us? Do we have a certain responsibility as individuals in a society? Or can we all the time blame the decision makers? Very important question marks. Now, and what can we do to reinforce the United Nations? Specifically at the time when the United Nations is being weakened, how can we as individuals, not only as member states, reinforce the role of this international organization that was meant to prevent us from heading towards hell? So this is why I believe that the discussion today will be extremely interesting. I thank you for being here. I wish you good luck. Please engage fully with our panel. These are persons who are managing this beast that I just discussed with you. And good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabia, for your opening remarks. And may we find a way today, with the help of this event, to break the circle that leads us to hell. I'm now delighted to give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garces, former President of the UN General Assembly, former Minister of Foreign Affairs and former Minister of National Defense of Ecuador. Excellency, you have the floor.
Well, good afternoon. After this very, very inspiring opening speech, literary opening speech, I feel that I need to be short. After the panels were announced, I think that we're all looking forward to listening from the experts. But allow me to address a few words as we start this journey today. It is a true privilege to be here with you for the second edition of the Doha World Negotiation Day. I thank UNITAR, of course, and its division of multilateral diplomacy. Thank you, Ravi, to you and your amazing team and your dream team. The Doha Forum, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar, Qatar Debate. And I thank you for placing negotiation at the center of today's global conversation. Because negotiation, I think, is no longer simply a diplomatic tool. Negotiation is a survival tool. And let me start by acknowledging the presence of several authorities, of experts, of representatives of the ICRC, of Madam President Tarja Halonen that is among us. Great respect for who she is and what she has done for peace. And greetings to all of you and to the panelists as well. So, as Ravi mentioned at the beginning, we gather at a moment of profound polarization, of profound fragmentation. We live in times where confrontation is replacing diplomacy, is replacing a peaceful solution of conflicts. And we gather in today when 2 billion people are living in conflict-affected areas. We gather at a moment where 123 million women, children, men have been forcibly displaced, and this is the highest number ever recorded. For 6 consecutive years, global peace has deteriorated. Let us say it plainly. We are managing crises more than we are preventing them. Our systems, our institutions are reactive, not anticipatory. We invest in the costlier aftermath rather than in the wiser work of prevention. And yet we know, and evidence confirms, that every dollar invested in prevention can save up to $103, some say. The IMF just said $1 in prevention is worth more than $1,000 in future conflict costs and reconstruction. So in a fragmented world, in a polarized world, peace must be negotiated, not assumed as a fact. And preventive diplomacy must become our default setting, not our last resort. So allow me to share with you 3 key messages today. Number 1, prevention starts with a new multilateralism. A multilateralism that is inclusive, that is agile and courageous. Pandemics, climate shocks, digital disruption, large-scale migration, no nation can solve these challenges alone. Today's risks are transnational, but our responses remain too often national, local, or reactive. Preventive diplomacy requires coalitions that reflect the real geometry of power today. We are living a multipolar world that requires a vibrant multilateral architecture. So in a world of high multipolarity, what we are witnessing is low multilateralism. So that means that we need to widen the table, give space and place to regional organizations, to middle powers, to cities, to women's networks, to youth, to civil society, to innovators and thinkers. Negotiation, which is the ability to listen, to persuade, to compromise, is what transforms that diversity into solutions instead of stalemates. The number 2 message is that the United Nations must reclaim prevention as its core function. The UN's comparative advantage is not force, it is legitimacy, convening power, early warning, and mediation capacity. We have seen preventive diplomacy work in the 90s and the early 2000s. The UN successfully diffused conflicts and saved lives. That muscle must be strengthened again. Prevention means envoys deployed before violence escalates, mediation teams trained and ready, analysis that anticipates rather than reacts. The world needs more United Nations and more preventive United Nations. My 3rd message today is that preventive diplomacy is the smartest investment we can make. Not only the most moral, but the most strategic. An international system built around emergency response is financially unsustainable and morally indefensible. Negotiation, dialogue, confidence building, these are the least costly and most humane pathways to peace. Prevention is the glue that can hold this fragmented world together. So what would be then the Doha imperative? If I might call it, use a title for it. The Doha imperative is what we do here, what UNITAR does, is not theoretical. It is not theoretical. When UNITAR trains a young negotiator, when knowledge is shared across borders, when mediators learn from success and failure, we are building the architecture of peace. Negotiation is not improvisation. It is skill. It is discipline. It is teachable. So let this be our call today, to make preventive diplomacy the first instinct, not the afterthought, to choose negotiation before escalation, to see peace not as the absence of war, but as the presence of systems, of mechanisms that stop war from happening. The future is still unwritten. We are its negotiators. So let us negotiate wisely, with courage, with inclusion, and with the conviction that peace is possible when prevention is prioritized. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your keynote speech, your 3 key principles, and introducing the Doha imperative.